at the
School?
Yeah.
Me too.
I thought it was great to see you. I just noticed Rich's background.
I wish you were coming.
Right? Sunny day. Is my name here?
It's over here.
I'm gonna leave anyway.
That's fine. Wherever you want to sit.
Ironically, I should have been worried about Mitch too.
I know, right?
Sat there in the car.
Okay.
I guess it's better than a piece of shit.
The irony.
All right, good to go? Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. If we would rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So first up, it is my distinct pleasure to preside over two promotions in our police department. First and foremost, and I'm going to talk a little bit about both of the folks who are subject to these promotions, and then we have to adopt a resolution, and there's a few more formalities. But we have Mike Foley, currently a detective who is becoming a lieutenant. He grew up in Irvington. He's been a police officer since '94, and I see him everywhere. A patrol officer, youth officer, detective, patrol sergeant, detective sergeant. He's a well-respected member of the department and the community. And secondly, we have police officer Anthony Capadora, who is being promoted to detective, and he has 8 years of service, 3.5 in Irvington. Began his career in Irvington in 2020 after coming from the Larchmont Police Department. Also served in the New York City, on the New York State Park Police, excuse me. And he's shown his dedication and commitment to the community and the police force through his work. He assists with instructing members in defensive tactics and is also a member of the Greenberg SWAT team. So I think first thing is the resolutions, correct? All right. Let's see what I can find. I'm going to make the following motion, which was resolved to appoint Mike Foley to the permanent position of lieutenant at an annual salary of $164,847, effective December 19, 2023, subject to a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 52 weeks. And I'm going to try to do these two together, if you don't mind, for the resolutions. And resolve to appoint Anthony Capadora to the contingent permanent position of police sergeant at an annual salary of $148,802, effective December 19, 2023, subject to a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 52 weeks. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Aye.
Thank you, Mitch. Okay, I guess I have to swear you in. So Mike, you want to go first? Sure. Eventually I'll be getting used to that. Raise your right hand, please, and repeat after me. I, Michael Foley, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States. I solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of police lieutenant. Faithfully discharge the duties of the office of police lieutenant according to the best of my ability. According to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me.
I, Anthony Capadora,
Do
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
solemnly swear I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York.
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of police sergeant
I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of police sergeant
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Courageous.
That's Hulk and Dave.
Yeah, that's a chance.
Perfect. One more. Hold on. Still in. There you go.
Congratulations. Well, this should clear the room because now we're going to present the 2022-23 independent audit by PKF O'Connor. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, nothing personal.
Just give it 2 minutes.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
That's it. It's exactly what
Oh, Larry, did you need that to sign?
Yeah, well, I'll take care of it later. Okay, that's fine.
Seems like I don't fall off this side, so I'll
And Larry's gonna pull up the presentation on the screen.
Yeah. Yep.
Relax, might as well let everybody get out. So is this different than if I have this book and the financials themselves?
So
Is
this
this
is
a subset, or is this tonight's presentation?
this is tonight's presentation. It's I find the PowerPoint more easily digestible than the
No
financial
problem.
statements, but it has the same information.
For better or worse, you have, I think, several people up here who are used to financial statements, so it'll help, I think. If not everybody here.
Oh, that's right now.
Okay.
So I'm assuming Mitch can see whatever's on
Yeah.
screen. Yeah, good.
Yep.
Yep, I see everything fine, thanks.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So now we have a presentation of the 2022-23 independent audit.
Great.
So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
So again, we have this PowerPoint handout that we have for the 2023 year. I'm Melissa Zott. I'm the engagement partner for the Village's audit this year. Samantha Nardo, unfortunately, she couldn't be with me today, but she was a supervisor who ran the job this year. If we go to slide 2. So tonight, I'm going to be talking about just have to go to the next page. Yeah, there you go. I'm going to talk about some required communications. Then we have the general fund, just an overview of your revenues and expenditures compared to budget. We'll dive a little bit deeper and go to exactly what happened for your 2023 revenues and your 2023 expenditures. I did provide a 3-year history for your general fund balance. The village does operate other funds, so I wanted to provide for you the results of those funds. And then just for informational and budget purposes, I provided some debt service schedules that we'll go over. So on to slide 3. Management and those charged with governance has certain responsibilities as part of this audit process. The first thing is to select and implement appropriate accounting policies, making sure that the financial statements are presented in accordance with United States generally accepted accounting principles. You must first and foremost establish effective internal controls, and then you want to do periodic reviews to make sure that those internal controls are maintained appropriately. And that just gives good checks and balances on the processes that happen at the village.
Should I just?
Sure.
I'm
Yes,
not going to
please.
interject with questions. Just keep in mind, one of my questions will be, I've seen your report on internal controls,
Mhm.
and also had the benefit of talking to our clerk treasurer about the entire set of financial statements. I'm curious whether, having seen the way we operate, and I assume this is not your first year auditing, there are any best practices that we're not doing, things that you might recommend. I know
Sure.
that might be a dangerous question, but I want to hear it, if there is an answer, and if you need to think about it, you can always get back to us.
Sure.
Things you might suggest. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can provide those to you now if that would be
Whatever
okay.
you'd like. Oh, if it was going to be part of your presentation, you're welcome to do it in the order you intended. I'm
No,
not
that's
trying to
okay.
disrupt you.
So we do have, as part of the handouts that we have and the reports that we issue, one of them is the report to those charged with governance.
Mhm.
And that would be the booklet, yes, exactly. In that booklet, we have some required communications, which I'm summarizing for you now. On the start of page, page
12.
10 would be our report, the comments that we have that are best practices start on page 11. There are 3 levels of deficiencies that we have the ability to report on. Material weakness would be the most severe.
Sorry,
Sure.
I want to make sure my question was clear. I have seen these and I do want to talk about them, but these you've pointed out and our clerk treasurer has actually sent a note back, at least to us. Did it go to them, I assume?
No, we had back and forth
Okay.
regarding the original draft, and then we usually don't give you our final response.
That's fine.
Right?
So,
That's internal.
There will be a response if,
Yes.
at some point. Then I understand why you're answering the question the way you are.
Yes.
But I'm interested, even beyond the ones you may have picked up, that I've at least seen the benefit of had the benefit of seeing the
Sure.
explanation. If there are other things that you see with other clients, for example, that we might adopt, that would be helpful.
Okay, great.
All right.
No, that's a great question. So generally, we try to incorporate any best practices as part of this document.
Okay.
If there is something that we see that may not warrant a written comment, we've definitely communicated that to the treasurer's office. I can't
Okay.
recall anything that comes to mind from this year's audit. So everything that we've included in the written draft or the written report that you have would be the best practices that we've identified. The management of those charged with governance should also ensure compliance with any contracts that you enter into during the year. And then as part of your external audit, just providing all of the financial records that we request. And I do really want to give a thank you to the village administrator and to the treasurer's office. It is a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of audit requests. So I just want to give a thank you to them.
Particularly the treasurer's office.
Credit where credit's due.
And probably the most important is just setting a proper tone at the top, making sure there's appropriate ethics at the village. On page 4, we, as your external auditors, also have responsibilities as part of this process. We do issue deliverables, and those are the reports that you've received today. We do have the independent auditors report. That is our report on the financial statements, and we have issued an unmodified opinion that's oftentimes referred to as a clean opinion. That's the best opinion that you could receive as a village. We have issued a single audit report. So when the village expends more than $750,000 of federal funded monies, you incur a single audit. And so we just test compliance over that. We've issued a report on compliance for each major program, and then a yellow book report. So we dive a little bit deeper into controls. And then as we just went over, we have your required communications to the village charged with governance, as well as a management letter that has those comments. We are required to communicate any fraud or illegal acts that were noted during the year. If any had occurred, we would have brought them to your attention prior to today, so we're happy to note that there were none. There were no significant difficulties disagreements with management, or any uncorrected misstatements that happened during the year. And just for a timeline, we were out here on June 16th to do the preliminary work. That's where we do the control testing. And then the week of July 10th, we were here for the field work, where we test the year-end balances. If we go to slide 5, this is where we kind of start going over the number aspect. So this is going to be your general fund. It's also inclusive of your ambulance service award programs. So if we look at the schedule, this is a 4-column schedule. Your first column would be the original budget. That's the budget that was adopted. Your final budget is in your second column. That would be any budget amendments that were made during the year or any budget transfers between lines. Your actual results, and then we have a variance with your final budget. If you look at the third line from the bottom, it's called net change in fund balance. In the first column, that's what you adopted. So you originally anticipated using $521,000 of your fund balance. The makeup of that is $175,000 even was included in the 22-23 budget to balance the budget. So that's what you had anticipated. But your purchase orders roll over year to year. If you didn't spend it, that budget fortunately moves to the next year. So that's $346,000. So that's how you get to that $521,000. You can see it jumped, it increased. So you anticipated using $1,091,000. That increase was mainly to fund capital projects during the year. But if you look at the actual column, instead of using $1,091,000, you actually added to fund balance $1,022,000. So that gave the village a budgetary surplus of 2.1.
Are you able to assess how much of that is pure timing and how much is we didn't use it? You know, more came in than we anticipated, or we spent less?
Yeah, definitely. So on the next 2 slides, we'll go over into the
Good lead-in.
detail. Great question. So if you look at slide 6, we'll start with the revenues first. Your revenues overall, if your revenues and your other financing sources had a favorable variance of 1.6 million, that's that 4th column variance with final budget at the bottom. We did provide you with the prior year numbers just so you have them to reference to. The first line I want to talk about is your real property tax. It's the very first line. You anticipated 15.2 million. You did not exceed the tax cap, historically have not exceeded the tax cap. And you can see that it came in about 52,000 higher. That's mainly due to your deferred tax adjustment. It's an accounting adjustment that we have to make due to the timing of your collections. The next line is your non-property tax distribution. That's going to be the sales tax distributed to the village from the county. So you can see that you had a 234,000 budgetary surplus. You had more coming in than what you anticipated, and even 100,000 more than last year. This was a trend that we've seen in 2023 upward. It's relatively consistent now. We've seen it drop a little bit, but that's going to be based on the economic trends and the spending. Your park and recreational fees, you anticipated 735,000. You actually only came in at 555,000. So it's 180,000 less than what you anticipated. You can see if you compare it to the prior year, you're actually up 107,000 from the prior year. So you're not necessarily yet back at the full pre-pandemic levels, but you are far beyond where you were in the thick of the pandemic, which was about 120,000. So you are higher than that. The next line, which is one of the biggest lines that you have a favorable surplus, is your earnings on investment. So that would be your interest earnings. As we saw, the interest rates were much higher in the 22-23 year. Again, a trend across most of the municipalities, for all the municipalities that we've seen. So that gave you a 485,000 budgetary surplus. Your permit fees did come over what you anticipated, about 225,000. There were more building permits issued than what you had originally budgeted for, which was at 331,000. Again, to a large number of home improvements during the year. Your mortgage tax. Your mortgage tax fell relatively consistent only a 48,000 budgetary surplus, a little under what you received last year. We saw it leveled off consistent with the prior year due to the housing market, how it impacted that. And then the last line I wanted to point out on the revenue side is going to be related to your federal aid. Generally, your federal aid is not really budgeted during the original budget process. You would do a budget amendment during the year. So you received 908,000. Of that 908,000, 576,000 was related to FEMA. So that would be FEMA monies from like hurricanes and other tropical disasters that happen that you were now receiving reimbursement for.
Was there New York aid, and if so, where would that fall? New York State, I
I'm sorry?
mean. Is there a similar category for things that we might get from New York State for things like this?
There is
There is.
And you don't have to, we can deal
I'm
with it later.
guessing it wasn't a big variance, that's why it's probably
Yeah.
not on here.
Yeah, that's okay,
You
that's
don't have
okay.
to look very far because it's not much,
Okay, thank you.
just saying.
So your other revenues, so that's your major revenues. Your other revenues, which means that it crossed various lines, had additional savings of 193,000 or favorable surplus. That's how you got to your 1.6 million on the revenue side. If we go to your expenditures, expenditures are a little bit more difficult to get a good balance of. You have a lot more expenditure lines, but we did try to cover the larger items here. You had a $70,000 savings in your law department. There were mainly savings in your professional fees. Excuse me, your refunds of real property taxes. You had a $46,000 savings. Last year was only $24,000. This year it's $103,000. We did see an increase in this due to the opening of the courts. A lot more court cases were going through, but it ended up being less than what you anticipated spending. Your police, this came in at 4.6 million. You did have a budgetary savings of 241,000, but you can see you originally only budgeted 3.9. The increase in the budget was about 900,000 was related to overtime payments that were requested for Con Ed. These were reimbursable to the village, so you did get reimbursed for those. The overtime ended up coming in less than what anticipated. Your emergency operations line, you can see that there was overexpended by 676,000. This is what would be funded through FEMA. So those were all reimbursed. Your transportation came in relatively in line, get a small savings there. Recreation, you had a savings of 102,000. Some programs this year in 23 were not at full capacity, like your summer camp or your baseball, those types of programs. Same thing with your park and nature center, small savings. The next two lines I wanted to point out were your state retirement and your medical and dental insurance. You can see savings of 45,000 and 103,000 respectively. You do prepare a budget a year before the rates are actually set. So it can be difficult or challenging to set that. So luckily the rates came in under what you anticipated. Overall, your budgetary savings ended at 505,000. So that's how you ended up getting to the surplus that you had this year. If you go to slide 8, this is going to be your general fund balance. The fund balance of the general fund is made up of 4 different buckets. We talked about on one of the first slides that we had with the numbers. Your total fund balance ended at 8.9 million, but not all of that is technically able to spend on village expenditures. The first portion or the first bucket is your non-spendable. Those are part of your fund balance that's earmarked to be spent in the future. You had a significant increase in your prepaid expenditures, and that was related to the timing of your workers' comp payment and your June bill of your night shift payment. So that will essentially be expensed next year. Then we had a new GASB that we had to implement this year in regards to leases. So you did have some cell tower agreements due to some accounting literature that we have to record. we had to put a non-spendable piece of 15,000. The next large item is your restricted. This is related to your ambulance service award program, so that's 821,000. It's not included in your budget, but it is included as part of your general fund overall for financial reporting purposes.
And if I'm remembering correctly, only the ambulance is counted in this, something like fire department is in a different fund?
Correct.
Okay,
I believe it's in a trust fund.
got it.
The next bucket is assigned, so that would be an internal assignment. The 307,000 is your purchases on order. That would be your encumbrances, items you have purchase orders outstanding for. You weren't able to make the purchases prior to year end. So that will be the budget that will roll into next year. Then you have your subsequent year's expenditures of 226,000. When you adopted your 23-24 budget, that would be what you anticipate using of the general fund balance to balance that budget. So then your unassigned 7,028,000, that's what you have to spend on village purposes. It's free and clear, essentially. So we do take a look at it of your next year's budget. So if you take your unassigned 7 million over your subsequent year's budget of 20.6 million, you're at about 34%. So relatively consistent over the past 3 years. Sure, absolutely.
Sorry.
No, absolutely.
You're all set?
Yep, thank you. Sorry about that.
Sorry, I thought I had to interrupt.
For those of you who question whether we need to do something about our facilities, you're watching we are using the courtroom for this meeting, and our judge is trying to make do. Justice, village justice.
Anyway, sorry about that.
No,
That's for a future meeting.
great. So if we go to slide 9, the village does operate other funds. Your water fund would be your water utility operations. You did end at 249,000 this year. You have 74,000 if you look at your assigned piece. You have some encumbrances. You're using some of that fund balance to balance next year's budget. The amount left over is 74,000. Your capital projects fund, that would be the fund to maintain all of the large capital purchases or acquisitions that you have during the year. You do have a deficit currently due to the way that governmental accounting requires. You do have a bond anticipation note, it's a short-term note outstanding to fund these projects, and that's about 5.9 million. So you do have enough to fund this deficit. It's just the way that we have to record.
That's a one-year piece of paper. Can we call that early if we chose to, if interest rates were to change quickly?
One year note, I don't think they're callable.
Okay,
The bonds have callable feature.
Okay. got it.
It's the 1 year notes. The only reason we're even talking about it
Yeah.
is because they don't come in as revenue.
Mhm.
So that's why you see a deficit.
Yeah.
But the cash is there.
I got it.
Yeah.
That wasn't what prompted
But
the
no,
question. It was a different.
yeah, they're not
thought.
usually callable.
Okay.
Mhm. Your debt service fund would be to utilize for future principal and interest payments on your bonds outstanding. So that's the money you have left over. And then your non-major governmental funds, that would be inclusive of your public library, your sewer fund, and then your special purposes fund, which are usually for donations. You do have a deficit in that column, the 4,600. That's related to your sewer
Mhm.
fund. So we did talk about potentially looking at the rates for the sewer
Sure.
fund in the future.
Can I just ask a question? The special purposes, is that like a combination of different funds? Of
So it would-
different trust account funds or no?
Yeah, so it would be for the various donations that the villages receive with specific restrictions.
Okay. So those are all the different ones together.
Yes, and that, I think on here it would be under non-major governmental, it's grouped in there.
So it'd be the 523,000. If we go to slide 10. So we do like to provide you for the future debt service payments that the village has outstanding. There currently are 3 bonds outstanding for public improvement projects totaling 11.9 million. You can see that the interest rates are provided for you. The highest interest rate will with 4 to 4.2, so the highest overall is almost come due. $325,000. And then the larger ones do have smaller rates that do kind of fluctuate over the year. And then if you look, you will have a majority of your bonds paid off within the 10 years, which is something that we do like to see. That does conclude my presentation today, but I can take any questions. Sure.
There was a note made about I think it was the cost of the firehouse architectural design. It's more than a firehouse, but and how that should be accounted. And I know I have the benefit of seeing your response, and which you do not, but to just explain to me what the issue was. We assumed it would have been covered by the borrowing, but since we didn't borrow, what happens to that particular expense? And I don't expect you to know this off the top of your head, so if I need to say more about what it is, I'm happy to do it.
That's for the firehouse architectural
Correct,
design.
the design costs, I guess you'd call them.
So this would be a fund balance where there were no bans issued. So I would, do you know what funding it's going to be in the future?
We'll be cleaning that up during the capital budget process.
So basically, the issue is where do we assign it and how do you cover that cost?
Yep.
We've paid it out of cash, but we have to allocate it somewhere, am I correct? Okay,
Yes.
got it.
Yeah,
Okay,
we did an advanced funding resolution to allow for the expenditures to take place without the borrowing having happened.
okay.
So we just have to clean that up. It could be out of fund balance, it could be a borrowing, it's something we can discuss in the whole context.
As we go forward and figure out how to plan for the rest of this, maybe even a sort of a larger capital plan long-term, we probably can have expenditures like that again. So we'll be revisiting the issue. That's why I was asking. And then my second and last question, you reference in this particular report a couple of GASB statements.
Yes.
How applicable are they to Irvington? One was subscription-based information technology, the other was compensated absences.
Great, good question. So GASB 96, which is going to be the SABITAs or the subscription base.
This is page 14. by the way.
Yes. This would be similar to the GASB 87 we implemented this year. The difference being GASB 87 is going to be for operating leases, and the SABITA or the subscription base are going to be for those subscriptions that you have that are long-term. We did implement some this year for our school districts, so we were able to see how vast it impacted them. What we have seen is most of the municipalities that we go through this analysis with is the subscriptions are relatively on a short-term basis, so it's 1 year or shorter. If it's 1 year or shorter, then that subscription specifically would fall out of scope of this GASB 96, and then it wouldn't be applicable. So what we will be doing, and hopefully we can do this before the audit starts ideally, is to work with the treasurer's office and go through a listing of all the subscriptions, and work with the IT department as well, and generally see what is long-term subscriptions, what are short-term subscriptions. Most of the time we see most of them are short-term.
And what this is requiring, it's probably not unlike what they do in a private enterprise, where revenue gets spread over the period of the subscription, but the expenses are taken up front. Is that the way this ends up happening?
So this
If
would,
there is revenue, and there probably isn't in this case, so it's just expense.
yeah, this would just be expense, and then it would take the, it's trying to show what the long-term liability impact would be for the village. So if you have, if your body cams are subscribed for 5 years, you're gonna have to outlay that for 5 years. So it's trying to record that on the government-wide financial statements. So it won't impact necessarily your general fund. You will see it, if it is material for the village, you will see it move to a debt service line instead of in a regular functional expense.
And then the compensated absences, which I assume probably has more application to us, which is, sorry, that's another policy.
Yes, so the GASB 101, which is compensated absences, this would be applicable to the village. We did go to an annual conference recently, earlier this year, and we listened to GASB speak. They're still trying to kind of iron out some of the issues related to the application of when your village employees might be applying this to retirement points, service years rather. So we do anticipate this being applicable to the village. It won't be applicable until May 2025 year end.
Okay,
So we do have some time, and we will be reading on some implementation guides that I'm sure that they will implement once they've gotten through questions from the municipalities.
I'm done. Anybody else have questions? So
Just a-
glad I'm done.
General question, you alluded earlier to the communications to those charged with governance, and I know Katie's responded to those. I'm just curious if, you know, I've been on this board for 8 years, and Pierre O'Connor has audited us for 8 years, and I'm sure a lot longer than that. Do you go back to previous communications that are given to see if those things have been updated from year to year to year?
Great question. So we do take that. So next year when we'll be out here, we start off with this document first. And then we go through every single comment that we have to see if it's resolved, what the status is, how far the resolution has happened so far. We don't necessarily go back to, like I wouldn't go back to 21 or 20. We generally do look at those items on a regular basis.
But in 21, you would have gone back
Correct.
to 19, to 20?
To 20, yep.
And 22.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's just done each
Exactly, yeah.
year.
We do have regular procedures we do on that, we usually uncover these items, and then we do on a rotational basis look at some haphazard items that we choose.
Thanks.
Anybody else? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much
Appreciate
for your time, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa.
Okay, next up are announcements. We're good. First is checks over 25,000, and one of them is a check in the amount of $29,690.63 to Those Guys Contracting for curbs, trenching, and catch basins for Main Street, Train Street. Oh, one more try. Main Street Train Station project, which actually is looking great. I got a tour with Larry and Ed earlier this week, or actually, I guess it was last week. Second check is for $28,815.50. It's A&J Construction of New York, Inc. for painting of DPW metal buildings. And is that in process or will happen, or?
It's done.
It's done.
Yeah, the
Even better.
painting is
Project's done,
done.
yeah.
Okay, got it. And the second item is to open we opening or announcing that we're scheduling?
You're
Schedule.
announcing the scheduling of a public
Okay.
hearing.
Yes, announcing the schedule of a public hearing to consider a local law amending the zoning code to eliminate the 5-year requirement for short-term rental registration. And that'll be held January 4th, 2024 at 7 p.m. in Village Hall.
So you're going to do a motion for that. There's a reason why,
Yeah.
but you're going to do a motion for that in a second to hold it.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion to schedule the public hearing as I just described. Anybody want to second that? All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Next up is correspondence. First is from Charles Myers, who strongly objects to the proposed amendment to ban gas-powered leaf blowers in Irvington. Says there's no practical alternative to gas-powered leaf blowers, that it will be expensive and it's misguided. While I didn't have a hand in making this decision, my intention is to see it implemented, and we can, if we have to make adjustments in the future because it's highly problematic, that is what we'll do. But in the meanwhile, it has been discussed at many, many meetings, and people have submitted their objections and submitted their statements in favor. So thank you for the input, and we will monitor what happens as we go forward. And I'm gonna skip around because some of them are related, some of the submissions. The next one is from Randy Huff. And we discussed this previously, but it was a submission with a list of volunteers and guidance on how to approach the Irvington land use permitting process. This was specifically prompted by the village's efforts to make changes in how the architectural review board works. And I'm very appreciative, I think the board is, everyone's appreciative of this submission that presents names of people who are interested in volunteering when we set up a committee for this purpose, and talks about sort of the problems, the goals, objectives, and how to do this in a phased approach. In the meanwhile, the board is going to look at some interim steps that we can take that will make it a little less complicated for the ARB to operate, because there may be some things, and these are suggestions that were actually submitted by members of the ARB, some things that we can allow our building department to handle instead of the ARB. And the next two letters, one is, let me see if I can find them here. Both relate to a noise problem at Hudson Loft event space at 2 South Astor Street. One was submitted by Ben Weltman. They live on Buckout Street, and they talk about a recurring issue where their home is literally vibrating from exterior noise at late night celebrations, I assume, taking place at Hudson Loft, and they talk about the impact on their children and how the police department has tried to intervene and some of the limitations. And so that's one on that particular subject. And then there is, let's see, a second from Cheryl Brandwine. I hope I'm getting that pronunciation right. Thanking us for discussing the Hudson Loft noise issue at the December 13th work session, and noting that Hudson Loft has been a nuisance to the neighborhood for many years, and FOIL requests have shown many complaints that never resulted in fines or penalties for Hudson Loft, and that police were instructed to come to their home each time to determine the reasonableness of their complaint and the impact it has on their children, of the house literally shaking from the noise. And we got a letter that'll be on the next agenda from 25 neighbors of Hudson Loft. And it included information they had gotten from from FOIL requests that were police reports from 2019 to 2023 that showed 19 different complaints, if my math was right. And I guess my response to all of these is that the board is well aware of the problem, and we are considering what to do about it, and will consult with the village attorney about these particular issues. Given the nature of the consultation, it will probably be done in executive session, but
An advice of council session.
an advice of council session. Thank you. So more to come on this particular issue, but thank you to all the people who alerted us to the problem, or at least alerted me. I'm sure the board was aware of some of it in the past.
John, just one comment.
Sure.
On the letter that will become part of the next
Mhm.
meeting that actually had a listing of complaints that were sent. A lot of them were 2019, and then COVID happened.
Yeah.
And it disappeared, and I'm sure it disappeared from our mind as well, because we were getting complaints. And now we're getting them again, because now the Hudson Loft is up and running again. So this problem's not going to go away.
Got it.
It hadn't gone away, it was only gone away because it wasn't being used at that time. So, it is a real issue. In reading through the police reports, it was interesting to me that it was handled differently by different officers. And there were different sort of summations and results based on the officers. And I know that officers need to use, their discretion on how to handle these things. But I think we need to come to some kind of agreement between the board and Hudson Lofts, and the neighbors need to know that there'll be some consistency in terms of how these things are handled.
Understood.
I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to add that in speaking to one of the neighbors who complained, it seems that the FOIL request didn't pick up all of the complaints, because someone said that this person knows that the police were called from his house, like something like 7 or 8 times, and he only saw his name twice in the FOIL request. So I think that the magnitude of the complaints might be larger than what the FOIL request reveals.
Got it. And I do appreciate the reminding me about the COVID interval, because that explains why it's been an issue for that extended period of time. It's not inattention, but rather things sort of stopped in their tracks. I guess next up is, I think that's the last letter. Next up is public comment. If anybody wants to speak, please step up to the mic, just tell us who you are.
My name is Shireen Rappaport. I'm here on behalf of myself and my sister, who's on Zoom, regarding the change to Parkside Way, which is becoming a one-way street. We own 99 Sycamore Lane, having recently inherited the property from our late mother, Ellen Silverstein. Our mom was the original owner of the house, and it was purchased in 1970. This past Saturday, we received a hand-delivered notice regarding this change. Apparently, there were 2 village board meetings in September and October this year regarding this change. We were unaware of these meetings, but certainly would have attended had we been notified of the proposal. Our driveway is on Parkside Way, even though the house itself is at 99 Sycamore Lane. The only safe way to access our driveway is from Parkside going towards Sycamore. Making Parkside a one-way from Sycamore not only negatively affects our property value, but more importantly, creates a dangerous situation for us and other traffic. While we favor a one-way change, this direction, as it stands, negatively impacts our property in several significant and dangerous ways. Entering our driveway under the change is extremely difficult. It would be a hairpin turn. I have pictures, but in addition, it would be impossible for emergency vehicles to enter the driveway from the opposite direction. The driveway is angled toward Parkside Way in order to enable cars to go in and out. It's not designed to have that hairpin turn into the driveway. The Irvington Police Department has agreed to examine the situation. As far as I understand, we were supposed to hear from an officer, Dunleavy, who was supposed to look at it. I'm not sure if that happened or not.
I know they discussed it today, but it's not,
Okay.
I don't think we have a full report back.
Okay. Additionally, there's a village drainage pipe running under our driveway. Turning left into the driveway under that change makes it just about impossible to avoid running over the pipe. It's been crushed before, so it's been replaced several times over the last 53 years. We request that the one-way be from Parkside towards Sycamore, allowing the safe entry and exit of all vehicles from our driveway and the safe flow of oncoming traffic. We would greatly appreciate an answer, as this is supposed to take place tomorrow morning. This change is supposed to happen. So as of tomorrow morning, it would be illegal for me to back out of my driveway and head towards Sycamore Lane, which is the only really safe way to exit the driveway.
So I didn't know there was a police officer looking at it at this point. Is there?
Well, I mean, it was the
It was-
general inquiry that I
Got
had
it.
with,
Okay.
with their sister this morning.
Yes.
So there are a lot of factors here.
Yes.
One is the traffic. There's a greater amount of traffic going the opposite direction, in other words. And I use that road all the time for
Yes.
biking, running, and you name it. And in fact, ran into your mom once or twice years ago with my wife, who happens to be here too.
Sorry for your loss.
Yes.
Thank you.
So there are certain factors, in addition to the volume going, more volume going, not the way you want it to go, which is sort of towards the village. There is the issue of, and this is perhaps anecdotal, I don't know what the police found when they looked at it, but I think more people are rushing down to get to the train than
Sure.
are coming up that road in the opposite direction.
There is accessibility through Sycamore Lane, just further down, if you make a right onto Sycamore Lane.
Yes, understood. So this, I can't pass the buck because I'm now the mayor, but the decision was made before I got here which way we go, and they made it for, I believe, valid reasons. So Larry, we don't know at this moment whether it was going to kick in tomorrow or it is going to kick in.
Yeah, it's scheduled to be
This
done
time-
tomorrow. Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion, and that is, it's not like it's irreversible. Can we try it? And can we offer, again, I need the police to tell me we can do this, to put a sign up next to your driveway that says hidden driveway or something that allows you to be able to do what you need to do with a warning to other drivers?
The problem is if you come up Parkside Way, the driveway is on Parkside Way. So in order to get into the driveway that way, you have to make a hairpin turn to get into the driveway, and it's narrow. There's a wall there. I
So if
have
you're coming from Sycamore,
pictures.
since I just came this way, if you're on Sycamore, you cannot turn up and in. It's
Can I
an
show
S turn.
You
I
can,
know.
but
Yeah,
it's
you
a K,
can.
it's a K turn.
Got it.
It's a K-turn. This is looking down the driveway.
But if you're coming from here, Sycamore is like this roughly?
Yeah, you're coming up from here. This is Parkside Way here.
Sure.
And you'd have to make a hairpin turn up the driveway. And there's also a pipe here at the bottom of the driveway. Right there is the pipe.
Yes.
So if you make the turn in that way, the pipe is a problem. And I just have a picture of the wall so you can see.
This is
it
a pipe that it's part of our
Cedar
drainage,
Ridge.
or it just runs under the driveway to allow water? That's what we don't know. Okay,
I never saw eye to eye with their mother on that issue,
got it.
to
Okay.
be honest.
In other words,
Just
we don't
being
know,
honest.
we don't know if it's ours or not?
Yeah,
Okay,
there's no easement.
got it. Okay. So
Here's a better.
let me ask it this way. It is not, as far as you know, it is or is not connected to our drainage system?
I don't know off the top of my head. No.
Got it.
From what I understand, it comes down from Cedar Ridge and goes underground.
So it may be a private pipe.
I don't know.
I get it. Okay.
I'm not sure. I don't think it belongs to us, even though it runs under our driveway.
There are other debates about things of this nature throughout the village, because things over 100 plus years appear. Thank you. I honestly, I'm still inclined to give it a try and revisit it. We have your correspondence will end up as part of our next meeting, correct? January 4th?
Yes. Mhm.
Can we try it for a couple of weeks and see what happens?
I can't, more to backing out of the driveway, there's no way to back out. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a hairpin backwards in order to go the right way on Parkside Way.
Isn't your, yeah, you're right. You
The
have to come
driveway is
down and
angled to go
cut.
straight back and down. That's the only way,
Yeah.
without destroying your car, that's the only way to do that, the way the driveway is built.
There's no right answer at this point, but other than I know what the numbers show in terms of getting the biggest bang for the buck.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's a very crowded road. I mean, it's a very narrow road and there's a lot of traffic on it. And I feel for the people that live on Parkside. I've gone that way for as long as I've been driving. It's always been dangerous going back and forth. I support.
Can we at least ask the police if there's something they think we need to do to make it easier? I'm not talking about construction, but signage, to make it easier for them to be able to back the way they need to back.
Yeah, I can ask for their opinion on it, sure.
Even if, I mean, I don't know if this is a traffic control measure, so whether you strike the road in such a way that, you know, tells people there's a warning that they may have to back the other way, I don't know. But I need to know at least what the options are.
Mhm.
And if we need to talk about it tomorrow, I'm around, so we can do that. I really do want to give you the protection you need to be able to get out of your driveway, but I really want to try it in this direction so we can see what the impact is. Because if we're wrong, it's a no-brainer to turn around and say, okay, it should be the other way.
Yeah, I just like in the immediate, like tomorrow morning, I don't know, I mean, how am I, to back out my
Is the
driveway and
signage
go the
up
way I need
already,
to
or
go,
it's
it's
just
gonna
the
be
warnings
illegal.
that says it's coming?
The preliminary warning signs were up, and then the permanent signs are going up tomorrow morning
Okay,
with the road closed until they get the signs up.
got it. All right. Then maybe you can, in the morning, you just quickly ask them if there's something else we can do to help these folks, even if it's a temporary sign, or that big temporary sign that's sitting there now, put on the other side of their driveway, you know, on the road to at least slow people down, so that they know they may have to back out to get around.
We also have to like drive down Parkside Way towards Sycamore.
Yeah.
In order to literally get the car out of the driveway. And I mean, to pull in is very difficult without wrecking your car or the driveway
All right,
from that direction.
I understand. So let's just see if there's something we can do just to help. I know I'm splitting the baby, which
No,
is
it's
not Solomonic, but, so, but I would like to try it and see what we can do, but try to give them some mitigation that can help. And if, you know, if there's nothing, let's talk about it. I'll be around.
Also, I
think
mean,
her
like,
sis-
we're
I think her
doing a lot of.
sister's on also.
Oh,
On
yeah.
Zoom.
Maybe
Got
it. If you-
here, yeah. What was I gonna say? Just, you know, we've been doing a lot of work on the house, making improvements, and it's very, for trucks, like, they just can't make that turn.
Yeah.
So we've been sending them through Parkside Way in order to get up to the house. There's no other way to do it. Or they go forward and back in, but then,
Is there a reason you don't, since you back out now, why can't you drive beyond your driveway and back up? So you'd be doing the exact same thing you do now.
so go forward and then,
Back up the driveway. So you
Back.
don't, so you come out forward and you're backing up the exact same way you get in now.
I come from Parkside Way. I come in right from Parkside Way.
No, I understand, but if you were coming from the opposite way and went slightly beyond your driveway and then backed up, it's no difference whether you're backing your car or going forward. The axles of your car will behave the same way, whether you're going forward or backwards, I believe.
That seems dangerous to me.
Not more dangerous than backing out into the road as you do now.
I don't know. I just don't see that as a solution to go forward and then backwards in order to get out of my driveway and expect anyone that comes to my house to do that as well.
But you're gonna back, you are suggesting that now you back out. You don't think that's dangerous?
Yeah, it's dangerous, but we've been doing
Because
it.
they come from both ways now. This way they would only come
You
one
look
way.
and you wait and you go. But now I'm gonna go forward and then back into the driveway.
All right, look, I understand your concern. I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I'm just
No.
trying to make sure I understand all of your concerns. And we'll revisit it tomorrow morning and see what we can do. Yeah,
She
somebody
still
else.
has her hand up, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
If she wants to talk.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi. You know, backing into the driveway is really not an option. We have to get into the garage, for example. And it's not just trucks that happen to be coming right now because we're doing work on the house. I mean, anything larger than a mid-sized car, and even at that, a mid-sized car turning left into our driveway is very, very difficult. And like, let's just talk about an emergency vehicle. I mean, you know, that's a reality that could happen. There's no way anything larger than a mid-sized car is going to be able to turn left out of into the driveway. And you know, I'm just honestly afraid to even leave this meeting without having like a temporary hold on this until you investigate it, you know, with the police tomorrow, because you really need to see it to understand. I know you run by it all the time, or people drive by it. I know, you know, I do understand that the studies show that the traffic, you know, that the way we're suggesting, there's much more traffic, so it's not going to have as much of an effect to eliminate the cut through people. But like our driveway, you know, somehow got overlooked, you know, in this process, in this discussion, and it's literally not an option. Like it's just not doable. I mean, if you have a little sports car, maybe. And, you know, and not only that, the very corner where this pipe is coming out is it's not smooth to the ground. You could damage your car. I mean, but honestly, this is about safety more than anything else. And I just really feel that it is extremely unsafe, not just for us, but for other cars that are coming. You know, signage warning that there's a driveway there is not going to make a difference. You know, there probably should have been a sign there all along, to be honest with you, even just the way we use it. But the only safe way to enter our driveway is coming from Parkside or exit it. It really is. And I'm honestly scared to leave this meeting without having a temporary pause on what's supposed to take place tomorrow.
Well, what I can tell you is until I have the chance to talk to the police department about the possibility of, you know, sort of mitigating your situation, we're not going to implement it. But I'm going to do that, you know, first thing in the morning is my intention. I don't know if anybody else on the board feels differently. I'm certainly willing to entertain your comments if you have. All right.
I mean, I certainly would want to hear from, if we've agreed to have the police look in, or the police have agreed to look into this, I'd like to know what their suggestions are for mitigation.
I agree with that.
Agreed.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, okay, no problem.
I'm
So-
not saying we're not
Right.
changing, I'm just saying if the police have a suggestion, that I'd like to hear it.
Yep. Fair enough. So what, I'm available tomorrow morning, whenever you want to do it, and whatever we hear, we'll share with everybody else. And then we'll decide how we go forward. All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for your
Okay.
time.
Anybody else have public comment? Okay, consent agenda. First up, minutes of village board from the organizational and regular meeting held December 4th, 2023, and the special meeting held December 7th, 2023. I think you folks all have the copies of that.
You can just roll through.
Yeah,
and
that's
do-
what I'm doing. It's just taking
Yep.
me a moment to scroll past the minutes.
Yep.
So I'm vamping. All right, next up is appointment of personnel and recreation and parks department. I assume I should at least read the folks. Hopefully I'm getting the names right. Elon Masseri, youth program assistant at $14.50 per hour. Jaden Quintana, youth program assistant at $16 an hour. And that is a resolution to make these following appointments effective December 1, 2023 through May 31, 2024. And lastly, approval of certain budget modifications. I think that's, yeah. And these are to reflect FEMA hazard mitigation funding for the Cyrus Field Road parking lot project, federal emergency disaster aid of $30,730. I assume the numbers next to that are just ledger entries where they're going, what accounts?
Yeah, the budget
Okay.
lines.
Increase in FEMA-related professional fees of $28,730, increase in FEMA-related supplies of $2,000, reimbursement for police supervision overtime. That's independent of the Cyrus Field project, correct?
Yeah, so
Okay.
you'll actually see this entry quite often Whenever, it's usually Con Ed work most of the
Okay.
time, and they pay us a fee, per hour for the overtime. And then once we get paid, then we do, this entry to increase the revenue and then the corresponding fees from the Con
Got
Ed overtime.
Okay. Increase in police fees of 45,483, increase in police overtime of 28,091, increase in police salaries of 6,112, increase NYS PFRS retirement, which I assume is the retirement fund for our employees, or is that fire?
This is the police and fire,
Police
but we
and fire.
don't have fire
Got it.
part of
got it,
that.
got it. So $8,148, increase in social security of $2,150, an increase in workers' comp of $982. I'm going to make a motion to adopt the minutes, appoint the personnel in the rec department, and approve 2024 budget modifications.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I probably just defeated your consent agenda approach by getting into it too much in depth, but sorry.
Your prerogative.
You'll teach me how to do this.
You're on a roll, so.
All right. Okay, next up is I'm making a motion to open a public hearing to consider a local law amending the village code to set the speed limit on Broadway at 30 miles an hour. I guess it takes effect upon, if adopted, it takes effect upon the filing with the New York Secretary of State of whatever it is that, that this 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. And am I correct that it was the state that recommended this?
Yes,
Okay.
let's second that motion first.
Oh,
Second.
sorry.
Second.
Okay, thank you, and then,
All in favor?
Aye.
okay, hearing's open.
Okay.
Good.
Any?
And yes, the answer to that is the state DOT reached out to us. This is, actually, if you go back to 2008, this is actually a request we made of DOT, and they did not implement it at 30 miles an hour on North Broadway because they wanted some consistency between our stretch of North Broadway and Tarrytown's stretch of South Broadway, which was 35 miles an hour. They've now adjusted Tarrytown's stretch to be 30 miles an hour, and now they'd like us to follow suit.
Got it.
So it, in a weird way, it came around 15 years later.
Good, well, I'll take it. There have been enough problems with children and others trying to cross the road, and a little bit slower isn't going to be a problem.
And by the way, that'll make it the 30 miles an hour for the full stretch of Broadway in Irvington.
Got it. If there are no comments for the public hearing, I can make a motion to close the public hearing. Oh, please, come on up. Sure.
My name is Andy Frankel. I live at 28 North Ecker Street. I've lived in this town since, I think, 1996, and this is the first time I've spoken to the board. I'm coming here to strongly encourage you to accept this proposal and reduce the miles per hour to 30. I've lived in 3 different houses in Irvington in that 27 years, both east of Broadway and west of Broadway. And when I lived east of Broadway, I would find that I'd have to scurry across the street. I lived on Riverview, so I lived on the part that was 35 miles an hour. And likewise, I find that when I'm biking, the speed of the cars is a hazard. And people, of course, drive faster than the speed limit. So really you're dealing with 45 miles an hour or 40 miles an hour. So I'd strongly encourage the board to support it. One other thing is that in my time living in the town, I've really come to feel that this is my home. And part of the reason it's become my home so deeply is because it's so walkable and rideable. And so, making the town walkable and rideable is also very social. Because when you walk, you meet people. When you ride, you're not in your car, you're not in that piece of metal. And it's become a very social experience. And I think anything that we can do to enable people to walk and bicycle is a huge positive for the town that not only, I think, benefits those who are walking and bicycling, but everyone else, because it improves the quality of life in the village.
Thank you. I'm a bike rider as well, so I'm highly sympathetic to the comments you made about biking and the speed when you're out there on the roadway.
So,
And I'm also happy to be in favor of what we're proposing here, so
so thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking.
You're welcome to come back anytime.
Sure.
Sure.
I'm Kathy Kaufman. Hi all, 28 North Ecker also. And I just wanted to mention, I'm really pleased that you feel so supportive of changing the speed limit. It's a wonderful thing. I don't think it would have been true when I first moved to the village. And I just wanted to mention that I'm also a big walker and biker and runner. And for most of the years I've lived in Irvington, I've used the aqueduct all the time, and I continue to do so. But I find that as my age advances, riding my bike on the aqueduct isn't as easy or relaxing as it used to be. And I lament that I can't ride on Broadway, but I absolutely feel like I'm taking my life into my own hands, and I believe I am when I do. So I find that it really does make it difficult to go from place to place. I'd like to get on the North County Trailway, and it's nearly impossible without putting my bike on the back of my car. So I feel like one thing that I've come to realize is that I think that making Broadway in general safer for pedestrians and bike riders would be a game changer for the village. I think it could be like incredible for property values and for the attractiveness of the village all around. I've actually been to other communities, historic communities, where the speed limit, the village speed limit is 25. And it's really slow. It's really slow, but they are incredibly charming places, and people want to live in them, and they want to buy property in those places. So I just wanted to mention that, as much as it might slow down commuting, it really changes the whole vision to make us more integrated.
Thank you. It's a different subject for a different time, but I think there will be a study of the Route 9 corridor and traffic and bikes and presumably, sidewalks and things of that sort. I don't know how it's going to impact Irvington, and hopefully we'll all still be living here when something is implemented, but this is the state, I guess, is actually looking at that as a process and how to do it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, can I make a motion to close the public hearing? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, got it, Mitch. So Larry, then we adopt, let's see, got it. Resolve to adopt a local law amending the village code to set the speed limit on Broadway at 30 miles an hour. The text of the law is here. I assume I do not have to go through that.
Correct.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Got it. Okay. Next up are volunteer appointments, and these are to various boards. For the most part, these are reappointments with a few limited exceptions. I will read some of the major boards. They're all important, but some of them have many members, so I'm not going to put people through this. But it's resolved to appoint the following village board volunteer committee members to the ethics board with a term to expire December 2027, Walter Montgomery and Robert Pouch with a term to expire December 2028, library board, and Goldfield Ream with a term to expire December 2028, planning board, Mike Bufolko, term expires December 2026, Rec and Parks Advisory Committee, Jane Ann Corelli, term to expire December 2026, Zoning Board of Appeals, with a term to expire December 2024, Judd Harsher, thank you. Apologies for mangling your name. And then there are appointments or reappointments to the Beautification Committee, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, Housing Committee, I Ask Executive Board, Route 9 Transportation Partnership Committee, which was the one I just referenced, starting to look at the structure of Route 9 through the villages. The Village Historian, the War Monument Committee, and the Irvington Woods Committee. So consider that a motion by me. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, an update from the Village Sustainability Director.
Sure, if you want to sit at the table, you're welcome to.
Thank you.
And are you going to be on the meeting? Do you want me to put the,
Oh, I could.
do
Yeah,
you
that's
wanna-
gonna be a good idea.
because I have a link to the,
Yeah, well, why don't you do it then? It'll
Okay.
be on there.
all right.
Got these.
Thank you.
Let me pass along. And these ones, there's multiple copies, a few different things in here if you wanna take through and take them for yourself, if you haven't already seen them and got one, particularly this one. Hi. So it's been a year since I started, so I thought I would start with an overview of metrics and basically work to date since I began. You can go to the next slide, Larry. First one's just the agenda. So the first thing I did when I started working in December, January was an overview of our communications platforms and strategy and our metrics, and outlined some goals, figured out some communication strategies and goals really. So looking at the Green Policy Task Force newsletter, Facebook, Instagram, and website, you can see there's been growth on all of these platforms. I also post on the Village channels, depending on the content. If anything is specific to the Village, I will post to everybody. If it's really green focused and not hyper local, then I will post to the green audience. The main metric jump there is really where I spend most of my time on the website. I had actually already built that as a volunteer before I started work, but I have deeply fleshed it out since then. And if you guys haven't been to irvingtongreen.org yet, I highly recommend you go. I'm updating it constantly. It's really a resource for everything environmental locally, and everything that's in here will be on there in some form or another. We've had a number of events, starting with Earth Day, which was a little early on, and then we've had now an institutionalized, a monthly Irvington Green meetup at the library, first Wednesday of the month. That's also become lately a climate series, climate talks, local experts and authors. It's an incredible brain trust right in our midst, and it's fun because they speak to global issues and then bring it home to local activation, and they can speak from their own local experience. So that's been really neat. We've had more than 100 unique attendees, which is gratifying to me because usually when I go to these meetings and in my organizing work across the state and in New York City prior to this, my overwhelming experiences is the same 10 people every time. So it's neat to actually get 100 unique people coming. We are getting beyond the choir. Average is like 20 to 25 people at a meeting. We've also had the EV Club, which has been a super fun hot ticket. We've had 4 events, and it's this sort of subculture, and there's all this buzz online, people chatting and sharing information with each other and going to dinner and stuff. It's really lovely. There's 39 members now of that. The flyers that I just passed out to you guys, there's a number, the Sustainable River Towns map is also online. It's really a comprehensive list of, restaurants and groceries and shops that source mindfully, where you can take your waste, public transport, all kinds of things, parks. There's a lot of good stuff in there. The landscaping flyer and the waste flyers you see there are 2 of what are going to be a series. I have a couple more planned, one on energy and one on construction. Those will ultimately all be handed out as a packet with real estate brokers. And then there are spontaneous ones that come up, like the spotted lanternfly, as that was a hot issue. We've been featured in the press 7 times, specifically on the work we've been doing. And the hot topics top right, I'll just go through things that really get a lot of attention on social media or that have brought crowds
our sustainable landscaping, really like leaf blowers is part of that, and alternatives to leaf blowers. The spotted lanternfly, the Irvington Woods, lots there. Recycling right, gets a lot of metrics online, electric vehicles, composting and events. As for the goal for 2024, now I've got, we're reaching a wider audience. That's great. We want to, as Melissa would say, get them up the and get ladder of engagement to become leaders in volunteering and projects to actually run the show a bit. So one of the main campaigns that we've been working on lately is Clean Energy Communities. This was all going on before I started working here. Larry and other volunteers created the first clean heating and cooling campaign that won us $5,000. We just launched the EV campaign in August, which got us another $5,000. And now I'm rolling out community solar and next tranche, the next tier of EV and clean heating and cooling campaigns, which could get us another $5,000, $7,500, and $10,000. So it's good. It's a great program. It's really a win-win. And it helps me to create a bigger budget for myself. Other areas that we're exploring, which I'll really defer to Larry on what to say when, were solar arrays that were, I think, super exciting, starting research on various locations and where the opportunities are. And then also EV charging, you'll hear more from Larry on that. Very exciting as well. It's all being covered by the county and Con Ed, and so there's a lot of infrastructure happening there. Okay, next slide. So the climate action plan is really the main thing I'm going through with you guys tonight. Just to give you an overview of it, some of you have heard me present on this a few months ago. We are working as a cohort with 9 municipalities with the guidance of CAPI, the Climate Action Planning Institute, ICLEI, the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, and the Hudson Valley Regional Council. And together we go through this process. We're done pretty much the greenhouse gas emissions inventory, which I reported on previously, and we're in the stage now of assessing mitigation strategies and doing forecasting to figure out, if we bring down emissions this way or that way, what does that look like? And I'll show you a little bit about that in a minute. But the next big thing is to workshop with the public, which is partly why I wanted to come to you first. So this will be February 7th. We're doing a big workshop with the public, and I hope you guys will come or ask me questions or give me feedback before then. And then the other thing that's happening simultaneously is I've just gotten a huge data download for community greenhouse gas emissions for the residents. So I'm going to put that into a digestible format. And then the next thing we're embarking on in the spring, well, late winter, is adaptation and resilience planning. And the deliverables there will be a climate vulnerability assessment report and an adaptation chapter for the climate action plan. Next slide. So digging into the greenhouse gas emissions inventory, which this slide some of you have already seen, but just to remind the overview of the big sectors in the pie chart. The first is the fleet at 46% of our government emissions. The next is building and facilities, 29%, and then employee commute, 23%. And then I'll go into each of those. The next one is the fleet. So 67 vehicles, breakdown of which 14 use more than 500 gallons a year. We're already on track to convert to EVs. It's been in the process for a while. In fact, since 2019 is the year the inventory was taken from, because it was the last year there's data before the pandemic skewed all the data. So already a lot's changed since then. We have a handful with 5, 6 now hybrids, 3 EVs, and more on the way, and chargers being installed. So that's already in the works. But we also had a great conversation with another company called Voltage that can help us work with our fleet to understand both where there's incentives, local, state incentives to buy EVs and timed with market opportunities, because often those things don't align. So that's just helpful to facilitate that process. And then there's maybe an opportunity to right size as well. We could maybe have 1 less truck, is my understanding, that kind of thing. So we're going to look at that more. In terms of buildings, I broke this up by departments, but it's a little confusing because the town hall is one metric, so that is 3 departments on the top left corner there, administrative, police, and theater. But you can see on the top right, DPW is really the big bulk of it, and then Rec and Parks after that. DPW is really where there's big opportunity, and I'll talk about that more when I go into individual departments. But there already have been changes, again, since 2019. The senior center HVAC has been upgraded, town hall HVAC is being upgraded, as well as additional steps. Like there was already an energy audit on this building with tons of great detail about very specific things, insulate here and, seal around this door. And I think because of the pandemic, we haven't seen all that through. So that there's some low hanging fruit here. The next page is commute. This is the third of the big pie sectors. And it was interesting because at first we were talking to people about, public transport or rideshare opportunities, and that was not a very popular conversation. But when we started talking about chargers and the opportunity for free charging for employees, then people lit up. And I think that seems like the greatest incentive to bring down those emissions. And it's a kind of a natural piggyback of what's already going on with our charging infrastructure for DPW and other departments who would charge at night, and the employees can charge in the day. So that's a nice symbiotic relationship there. The next slide, we went to each of the department heads and had a conversation with them about their metrics, and that was very illuminating in terms of what they've already got in the works and what opportunities there are that relate to these metrics and beyond. And I won't go through all of this. There's a lot of detail here, but you've got it if you ever are curious. The library is has already done all kinds of stuff. Upgraded their air conditioning, which was huge because when we drilled down into the kilowatt hours, they were by far the biggest consumer of electricity of the buildings. So that's already going to be much better since 2019. They just recently added motion sensors for lights and water in their bathrooms. They already host repair cafe events and donate used books. They have a pollinator garden, all kinds of things that are very helpful. We could still do an energy audit for other aspects of that building. They are part of just recently joined the Sustainable Libraries Initiative, and then through that they created a whole strategic plan. And there's more. There's a potential solar array over their parking lot. DPW, as I was saying earlier, is the big one. And I will call attention to a few things here. They've already done a bunch of things. They've installed LED lights. There's a new roof. They've replaced 5 garage doors with insulated doors, a bunch of things. But I think the biggest opportunities with them are insulating roof on the office, putting in an exhaust capture system on the mechanics garage so they're not getting poisoned or having to keep their doors wide open all winter long. And no insulation on a lot of these buildings. Windows that either should be replaced or maybe have winter windows on. I know a lot of this is up in the air a bit because of what's happening with this bigger, comprehensive plan process and whether we're moving firehouses and DPWs and all this. So with that in mind, nothing's going to happen for a few years. We can think about what is worthwhile in the short term. There's still some steps that I think would be effective, even just for a few years. The next page, we went to the police department, theater, administration and building department, and there's more opportunities that we're all looking at. It was really great having those meetings with each of them. Some of these are sort of related to, there's a bit of blur with municipal emissions and community emissions, and some of this is policy. So, for example, if you go to the next page, additional mitigation strategies, there's 4 green policies. Don't have time to go through all that today, but I'd love to be put on the agenda in the new year to discuss these policies with you guys. But just as a quick overview, green purchasing is a sort of standard template, is support from the county. Thank you, Larry. We've talked to the departments about it, and it just seems like a no-brainer and a nice, significant impact making sure that everything we buy is sourced sustainably, that kind of thing. Chet Kerr and Alan Richardson from the Tree Committee and I have been working on a native plant policy for a number of months. We should be done with it any minute now. There's a unified solar permit that is a standard template that we can get climate smart community points for, and I think would improve our solar permitting process.
Can I ask you a question there?
Yeah.
So in terms of like purchasing policies for native plants, and just also, I know you and I
This
have.
is only for governments,
Yeah,
not
for
for
government
residents.
stuff.
Yes.
No, I mean, even for all the plants, I mean, that would include all the plants we buy from Main Street.
It depends on what the policy says.
We're not including like annuals from the beautification committee because that's impossible.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's different levels you can address, whether it's trees, shrubs,
Right.
annual, I mean, it's a whole gamut of things.
Right, so this is why it's been many months of back and forth, trying to have something that is pushing us forward, but within reason. But there are other examples out there in the county and Terrytown, so we've been talking to them and getting feedback. And then the last is the green building code. Interesting that Hastings has an example where you can tick boxes for various environmental pieces of your construction project. For example, you may choose low carbon concrete, which is really a significant thing, or less, more permeable surface, whatever it might be. It's less prescriptive. In other words, you choose a certain number to make a percentage that is acceptable. And I think that's a nice way to both educate people on all these green construction realities and have a high bar, but not be completely prescriptive. And knowing that this is as we are also reviewing our permit process, the over prescriptive code can be a problem. So I think that's a nice solution, and I want to look into that a lot more and talk about that with building department and others. The Irvington Woods is another one that's really interesting. We have done calculations, really. Warwick Norton has figured out that it is sequestering, the woods are sequestering 1,104 metric tons of CO2 equivalent per year. And if we just scroll back as a reminder, the total emissions for municipal greenhouse gas is 1,119. So it's not far off. Our woods are basically sequestering what our government facilities and fleet and employee commute, et cetera, are creating. So that's nice. There's more coming in the woods in January, and I'll actually be presenting on that as well. I've really come to understand what an incredibly valuable asset it is, and unfortunately how jeopardized it is. So those projections for carbon sequestration and carbon storage are plummeting. Other opportunities for mitigation, solar arrays, some of these I've already talked about, charging food scraps. The police department, has an actual canteen. We could do composting there. We're in process to do, Larry's got us going on a grant opportunity to study curbside pickup collection for up and down the river towns. And I would really like to see us composting at events. And that actually might be another policy, because I was told last time I tried to do it, well, if there were a policy, maybe we would try. So maybe we need to put in a policy. It would be fun to estimate what the impact is of converting our gas leaf blowers to electric, and an anti-idling campaign. There's a lot of opportunity to play with these levers. Speaking of which, we have this great tool through ICLEI, through a platform called ClearPath, to actually, because we've done all this great data input, thanks to Larry, and now we can play with the data to forecast mitigation strategies. And so this one is just beginning, it's playing with, so for example, if we had 8 buildings that converted to electric heat pumps, and we assumed 50% of our commuters converted to EV, and you already see there, we are reaching our climate goals, which if we're going with the CLCPA, Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act for New York State, that's the red dotted line along the top. We're just about there with just those 2 conversions. So it's doable. And that's not, not even including a lot of the other data sets. So that's the kind of thing that we will play with when we start to engage the public. Next slide, which I have scheduled for February 7th. And I really want to bring a lot of people into this conversation. You guys, the public, local businesses, churches, the Student Environmental Club, I'm friends with all those guys at this point, the taxpayers for Irvington's future, the people who are thinking about our comprehensive plan. Again, you know, this is everybody who is thinking about the future of Irvington. I want to get them in the room. And we want to review our government emissions, the community emissions. At that point, I'll have a report on what our community emissions are as well, and the Irvington Woods, and potential mitigation strategies, some of which I've walked through with you guys, and to get feedback from them. You know, each time I have a stakeholder meeting, I learn a lot, and it influences all of our decisions. And ultimately, it will turn into the giant comprehensive Irvington climate action plan that I think we'll have ready in the summer. And then that will also enable us to have enough points for a silver status climate smart community. So the next slide is really the last real thing for me is I'd like to make the case for an energy intern. I'm actually covering the budget. It's $17 an hour for 15 hours a week, and it's 90% covered by NYSERDA. Really, just so great. And I know other people who are using this program and love it. And it will end up costing us $30 a week, which I could pay for out of the $5,000 grant. So it's not really any budget request. It's more just an approval to proceed. And yes, this person could help with all kinds. I mean, you'd go through the list, but there's a lot, particularly the Clean Energy Communities programs, the community solar, the EV, and the clean heating and cooling. All those things bring in more money. So having an intern help with all of that content and also with, you know, the CAPI stuff, the climate action planning stuff we're doing to analyze the data, I would just be incredibly helpful. So I don't know if that's something I put to you now to approve an official process. Is it like formal process, or I just
Part of the budgeting process going forward, or?
Well, I don't know, I mean, I don't know what the requirements are for submitting for the grant, whether you need board authorization to do it or
I
not.
don't think so.
My guess is that you probably need authorization to submit. So once we have the details on it, you'll have that back in front of you. But as far as the part that's not covered by the grant, it's pretty insignificant.
Yeah.
So we can probably figure that out as part of the budget process. So.
Great. And then my only final thought is I'd like to be put in the agenda sooner than later for the various green policy conversations I would like to raise, which is the last slide. And that's it for me. If you guys have thoughts or questions, I'd love for you to bring them to me now or before the February 7th meeting with the public, or just come then.
What time is the February 7th?
7 p.m.
Thank you.
Irvington Public Library.
And we're gonna see something in writing on those before you would come before us, or?
I mean, well, what do you mean? I will definitely be promoting the event.
No, the policy opportunities.
Oh, this is a separate conversation which could happen, you know, in the spring, but it's parallel, but not
Got it.
directly.
I'm just suggesting you'll get more done if you've had the chance to absorb it rather than you just coming and telling us about it.
Sure.
If you're expecting us to act on it, you're going to want us to see it in advance. That's
Right.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
coordinate that
Okay.
to make sure that it's ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was telling John outside, the reason I didn't send it earlier today is because my basement flooded, my internet was down, and my kid was homesick.
But other than that.
Charlotte, for the intern, you're considering like a high school student?
No, college.
Like college?
Yeah. Yeah, like a climate science person. Somebody who can really crunch data with me.
Great.
I was gonna say about the solar, I don't know if there's an opportunity to do that sooner than the others. Because I think one of the things we were looking at with ARB, you know, they had asked that we help simplify the solar laws there too. So it would be great to, you know, get your input on that.
Sure.
Yeah, you may want to, if you have input, move it ahead of the others. Just
And
because-
my name is on that committee as well, so I'll be a part of all those conversations. I'm on every committee. Y'all are
Charlotte,
happy.
how are we doing on the EV program?
It's great. I mean, we won the first tranche, the first $5,000. Now we have to get another 10 people.
And do people have to report to you, or do you just pick that up automatically on a
It has been the
registration?
case, although now, just like a month ago or so, they've shared a new way to just look at registrations, and so that simplifies things a lot.
And leases count as?
Yes. Mhm. And EVs or plug-in hybrids. Electric vehicles.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Reports of board, standing committees, and officers. Start?
Sure. I just have one report from DPW. And an important announcement because we don't have a meeting before the tree recycling starts, Christmas tree recycling starts. So I just got a report from Greg about the Highway Department East Sunnyside curb project is scheduled to be completed no later than December 29th. All plows and winter equipment are prepared for the winter. Let's just hope the snow stays away. The plow racks have been installed in the DPW garage, and they're working together with the IPD and the Town of Greenberg Traffic Bureau to safely transition Parkside Way to a one-way street. So to be seen there, but I think a pretty important one, since we will not have a meeting once this starts, which is the DPW starts the Christmas tree recycling. They start picking up Christmas trees curbside on Mondays for the northern side of the village, and Thursdays for the southern side of the village. The north side is north side of Harriman Road to the northern border, and the south side is south side of Harriman to the southern border. Christmas trees have to be free of ornaments, lights, and tinsels, or they will not collect them. They also can't be in plastic bags, and because they won't pick them up as well. And the Christmas trees will be collected as manpower allows and weather permits. So you can leave your tree out there, and eventually they'll pick it up. Is the point.
Just one, tomorrow is the Senior Citizen Holiday Luncheon at the Senior Center. I believe it's 11.
Rich, I skipped over you, sorry. Do you have something you want to add?
That's okay. I'm buried in COVID land, so I'm out of the loop. So I haven't anything today. Sorry.
Thank you for doing it remotely. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, I got a short update from the building department. Still very busy with permits. The inspectors went on a seminar to learn about restaurant inspections last week. The fire inspections for the schools are complete for the year. They've been, working with Cloud Permit to get the new system ready by the first of the year. And I think as John mentioned, Ed's been busy working on the bottom of Main Street, which is looking great. He said it should be mostly finished this week, except for street lights and the stair handrail, which are on order. That is it.
Okay. Village administrators report.
Just a quick report about how the village fared during the storm last night. So from a flooding standpoint, things seem to be pretty well under control. The rain was obviously a lot of rain, but it was spread over a pretty wide range of time, which was helpful. So we didn't see any major flooding in any of the areas of the village. I'm sure there's private properties that experienced some flooding, and but I'm talking about village infrastructure. We did have a number of trees down, about 5 or so trees that were significant enough that our DPW had to come out and clear them. A couple on Broadway, which were a little dicey, and there's a pole that's leaning on Dow's Lane, which caused the change in traffic flow to the Dow's Lane School. They were not without power, but they had to come in a different direction. Con Ed is out there, I think pretty early this afternoon. I'm not sure if they've finished their work yet, but hopefully everything's good by the morning, but the police will be in the mix of all of it.
Okay. To that particular issue, the Con Ed issue, I want to thank our representative in the State Assembly, Mary Jane Shimsky, who texted me earlier in the morning asking inquiring as to our status and offering any assistance we needed. If somebody needed to intervene with Con Ed. Thankfully, we didn't need it, sounds like so. Okay, the village clerk treasurer's report.
Just another reminder that second half taxes are due by January 2nd without penalty. And budget season is underway. So budget requests have been sent out to all of the departments. They're due back to me by December 12th. And then meeting wise, our first discussion will be January 16th, and that'll be a general budget overview.
Village attorney, report?
I don't have a report, but just a request to meet in advice council.
Okay. And review of action items.
Public comment, just
Oh,
as a
forgive
second bite
me,
at the apple.
any
here.
further public comment? No? Okay. Review of action items, I guess it would be meeting up in the morning
Parkside
on
Way, yeah.
Parkside Way.
Yeah, which, and I, both departments were notified about what,
Got it.
putting things on hold, so we'll
Okay.
catch up with that in the morning.
Thank you. And now I am going to make a motion to go into a session to seek, actually, it's both.
No, just
Just
personnel, executive session
fine,
regarding personnel.
executive session on a personnel matter.
Second.
All in favor?
Oh, aye.
Thank you.
So I don't need a motion. I don't need a motion for advice of counsel, but I do
Correct.
need a motion for the executive.
That's
session.
correct,
Thank
yeah,
you.
so we're just making
All
that
right.
distinction.
It's all coming back to me.
All right. that's
Okay,
it.
thank you, everybody. Mitch, I got your text, I will call you, landline.